Welcome back, everyone, to the Game or Die podcast. My name is Ryan Moore, as always, and this is episode 72. And it's been a while since I recorded this podcast, and I just kind of wanted to get it done. So I'm actually coming to you live on Twitch after my workday, where I've been streaming work stuff, and I just wanted to do a little bit something nice and special to talk about all the games that I've been playing over the last several weeks, about a month and a half, almost 2 months, because I did it on my birthday. We're at the tail end of October here, and man, oh man, there's been a lot of games that have come out lately that I have been playing, and I've kind of gotten back into the swing of just, playing games pretty much regularly again after this really weird several months in the summer where I wasn't playing much of anything at all. And I just looked at my backlog of games that I've finished over the year, and there was a 3-month period where I didn't finish a single video game. I don't know if that's ever happened in my life. It was just a really, really weird summer. So I do want to talk about a few games that I've been playing and talk about some of the games that are coming out. One I'm very, very excited about. I've been waiting for, I think, about 13 years. So let's kind of get into it. The Dark Souls franchise / genre, because that's really all it is. And I've gone into the way in depth and rants into the Dark Souls series and genre. But there was a game that came out last month called Lies of P, and I believe I talked about it in the last podcast, where basically it's a Dark Souls game, because they all are, and I got to stop doing that, but I really want to drive the point home that they're literally all the exact same game. And Lies of P is the exact same game as Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Sekiro, Nero 1 and 2, all of those. I could go on and on and on because there's a litany of them. But Lies of P came out last month, and it was one of the very few games in that genre where I went, ooh, that looks a little bit interesting. And the reason why is because I don't want to play the same game over and over again, but the story grabbed me. And the story is basically Pinocchio. So it seemed. So I loaded this game up, and I was actually contemplating buying it and was like, do I really want to spend my money on this game that I don't know if I'm going to like? But I did it last year with Elden Ring, and I actually really liked that game. I got really into that game. I think I dropped 90 plus hours into that game, roughly, within a month. And that is like unheard of for me. I very rarely ever drop that many hours into a single game, period, and then let alone within the month. And it was because it was our game of the month for the Couch Money Discord and all that fun stuff. But when I was playing this game, I was really excited, and I was debating on buying it first and foremost, but then it was announced that it was going to be on Game Pass, which Microsoft's Game Pass is phenomenal. It's, just like every other subscription model out there right now, you pay X amount of bucks per month and you get a bunch of stuff. So this game came out on Game Pass, so I'm already subscribed to the service because of another game I'll talk about a little bit later, Starfield. But that game came out, and I was like, all right, cool, I'll at least play it. I'll load it up, and I was really excited about it because it's a Pinocchio game, and that sounds really, really interesting. However, this game, it sucks. It's a bad game. It's a really bad game in most aspects. It's an okay game in that genre, but it seems very forced with the Pinocchio analogy. Like, it's not even a Pinocchio game. They just take some of the characters' names and some very basic concepts like lying. Lying is a very big part of the Pinocchio story because his nose grows whenever he lies, and depending on which iteration of the story you go with, that can be a very big plot point in the story. And so that in and of itself sounds pretty unique. The game is called Lies of P, P standing for Pinocchio. So it's like, it should be a pretty ingrained, massive part of the game, like a large game mechanic. It's not. It only shows up 4 or 5 times, depending on if you search for it, because basically it decides the game ending, and there's like 3 game endings, I believe. So depending on how much you lie in the game, you'll get a good ending or a bad ending. And that's pretty much it. And also, if you kill certain characters or spare certain characters in the final act of the game, that's really about it. That's the whole determining factor of this big whole Lies of P. Oh, Pinocchio's going to lie, or is he going to not lie and tell the truth? It really just doesn't matter at all. And it's a real big bummer because the game actually sounded pretty interesting for the most part. So basically, Pinocchio, the character that you play, is not really a puppet. He's a robot. And all the enemies that you fight aren't really puppets. They're robots. Even though they call them puppets, and even though the whole game is based around puppetry and all that, they're robots. That's all they are. And it was really, really interesting because Atomic Heart came out earlier this year, and it's a very similar situation where you're battling robots that kind of have human facial features, but like still have like the very, obvious look of a robot. And I think that game did it way, 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 way better. First, because it's a first-person shooter, and so you can actually get in close with details of character models and things like that. And the Dark Souls genre is really not concerned with story, and the story in this is barely there. There's maybe about 4 or 5 cutscenes as well in the game, one at the beginning, one when you meet, quote unquote, your master, Geppetto. And Geppetto could be labeled anything else. He has no discernible character traits other than he's the maker of the robots. I'm not calling them puppets because they're straight up not puppets, they're robots. So he's the maker of these robots that are in houses and become like servants and all this. And there's an uprising. It's a robot uprising story. That's the main game. It is not like, oh, Pinocchio, and he goes across and, learns the value of being true to yourself and telling lies and things like, no, none of that is in this game at all. It's just, you are a robot, there's a robot uprising, and you got to go find your maker. That's the entire game. And so you're going across this game in the Dark Souls fashion where you have a bonfire, and I'm calling bonfires because that's what they are. You have your souls that you get as you accumulate and kill people, and then you can spend them on upgrades. It is literally the same exact game. Up to the animation of it, which is such a freaking bummer. It's like, dude, this is why I hate these games. It has nothing to do with like I'm cranky and old and I can't beat these games, which I think this game is absolutely unfairly hard. And I'm really glad that I did not spend the time to quote unquote get good, because I am good because I've been playing games my whole life. It's the fact that I don't want to waste my time on something that's absolutely unfair and not actually designed to make my skill level increase. It's me memorizing animations. That's all it is. So this game is it's a carbon copy of Dark Souls. And I only played through it because 1, I was trying to get back into that, mindset of video games. 2, it had the promise of a Pinocchio story, which did not deliver in the slightest. I can tell you pretty much almost verbatim the entire amount of dialogue and story within about 3 minutes, because that's all there is. There's very little dialogue, and the stuff that is there, it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, and then they do nothing with it. I think my favorite part of the entire game is a character you don't even see. There's 2 characters you don't see in the game. Jiminy, which is called Gemini. I don't know why, but he's basically your conscience, Jiminy Cricket, right? He's a cricket, but he's a robotic cricket. And he just kind of hangs out with you in this little lantern that you have on your belt the entire game. He'll pop up every once in a while, offer some clever dialogue sometimes, but most of the time it's kind of just annoying. So it's not really written very well. And then also, basically, it basically has this moment where you come across a lady who's crying in a windowsill in a building. Like you're walking along the scaffolding of a building on the outside, you come across this lady's silhouette in the window. And so it says, hey, do you want to speak to her? So you speak to her and she says, oh, please, please, please help me. They took my baby and I'm growing sick, because the whole thing is like this city is in lockdown because there's some plague happening where it's turning people's eyes closed and like they're becoming disfigured and dying. It's probably an analogy for COVID. I can almost guarantee it, but that's kind of what it is. So she goes, can you please help find my baby? And so you go, sure, of course, I'll help you. And you go, down the street or whatever, and then you come into contact with a big group of robots. You fight all the robots, and you find that the robots killed all the people, but there's one baby, but the baby is also a robot. And then you go to, you pick up the robot and you say, oh, what am I going to do? And then you can go back to that lady and basically give her the robot baby that doesn't work anymore and say, oh, your robot baby, or your baby looks beautiful. She goes, oh, is my baby beautiful? And you can lie. And that's like one of the 5 times you can lie in the game and say, yes, it's beautiful. And she goes, oh, thank you. Oh, I love my baby so much. Even though I'm dying, at least I can have my baby with me until my final breath. And like, it's weirdly morbid and creepy, but also kind of like a sweet thing too. And so like, it's got this really interesting aspect to it, but they don't do anything else with it. And you don't come across anything else like that in the game. It's a one-off thing. And it's like, if this game had like 10 different encounters like that, that would be really interesting. But that's the only one I came across, and I beat the entire game, and it's a long game. It is a way longer game than it needed to be. I was ready to have that game be done like 5 hours earlier. It was just like dragging on and on and on. And just like with Elden Ring, the part where you go, oh, this is the end, it should be the end, and they keep going for another 5+ hours, and it's just like boss fight after boss fight after boss fight, extra area, extra area, extra area, extra area, and it just drags down the entire experience. So I wrote a review for it, and in the beginning of the review, I said, I'm so glad I cheated during this game. And what I did is I downloaded a mod to basically up my power and health and things like that, because basically most of the characters can one-shot you, where you basically were walking through somewhere and some character just kind of appears out of nowhere, and there's like the entire game is basically that. You're walking along and some random character appears from behind you or from around a corner, hits you, and then basically either stuns you to where they can hit you multiple times and then you die, or they hit you once and you die. And then you have to go all the way back and then redo it and then find your souls and pick them up so that you don't lose progression, blah, blah, blah. And it's stupid. So I said, after like the first, because I did play the demo a couple months ago when it came out on Game Pass as a demo, or Steam. I think it was Steam. I was like, oh, I'll try it out. And I went, ooh, this is really tough. Like, this is pretty tough for a beginning area of a game. And I mean, that's what that series / genre is, founded on, is, hey, we're going to make this really difficult and unfun for you. And I said, I'm not going to do that. So lowered the difficulty. I added some mods and cheats to it to make it more fun. And I did have an okay time when it was like that because I was exploring and looking at the environment that they created because it looks really cool. That's also another part of why I was drawn to that game is it looks really interesting. But the gameplay itself is, we've had 500 plus games that they're the exact same. You can just play Dark Souls if you really want to play Dark Souls. Like, just do that because Lies of P is just a worse version of that game because it's the same animations, the same menu systems, the same everything. But the level environments and the detail, and like I said, like that one-off character interaction was really interesting. There are just several other characters that you interact with, and they basically don't do anything. They offer a couple lines of dialogue when you first meet them, and then they just kind of sit in their place for the remainder of the game until something happens, and then they disappear, and then you never see them again. Like, it's such a worthless character setting. Like, why are all these characters thrown at me trying to make them important? They literally don't matter. If they didn't exist in the game at all, I wouldn't have noticed because they just end up being completely worthless characters. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I hate that this series, this genre is so popular because it kind of sucks. It's a very shallow experience. It's the same thing. And you could say, oh yeah, but you don't understand the combat is so deep. Not really. The combat is just memorize the pattern, aggro the enemy, memorize their attack pattern, and then dodge and then attack. That's all it is. And yes, there is more to it than that, but that's on the basicness of it, and that's the entire game. There is very little interaction with other characters, and when there are, it's like two minutes of dialogue, and then you're done. It's like maybe 5 sentences. It's just, man, there's not much to this, and I really wish there was because I do want to get into this genre because there's so many games, but they don't do anything different. None of these types of games do anything different. And again, just looking at the HUD elements, like your life meter and your souls meter, and the fact that they're the same exact thing, souls, but they're just changing the word. Like, it's such a surface level change that it is the exact same. And the canned animations for opening doors. You go to a boss area, there's fog, and you have to wade through the fog or open a door. And it's just like, dude, come on. Are you blind? This is the exact same game. So that's really all I have to say about Lies of P is I beat it by cheating because I would have never played it otherwise. Like, I would have played 5 minutes of it and turned it off and never played it again. I played through it and I liked the environments, but boy, it should have been a different game and it could have been a billion times better. It would have been a top game if they did something different than the Dark Souls, expanded on the actual Pinocchio story, because at the heart of this game is just Dark Souls with the name of Pinocchio as the veneer. It is just, hey, this is Pinocchio, but it's really not at all. So there's my rant of Lies of P out of the way. I don't even want to talk about it more because, like, as much as I wish I could go into more detail, and I could, I don't want to. It doesn't deserve it. It's not a good game. So there is also Starfield. Starfield is, oh man, this is a big one. I wasn't looking forward to Starfield. Even though it's a Bethesda game, and I like Bethesda's games, and my wife loves Skyrim. My wife adores Skyrim. So we have Game Pass, and she was really looking forward to Starfield. Like, within the week of it being launched, like leading up to launch, she was just like, oh, are we going to play Starfield? Are we going to play Starfield? And I was like, yeah, I guess, And then the day it got released, I started seeing people playing it. And I was like, oh, I should load it up for Elizabeth on her Xbox. So I loaded it up through Game Pass on her Xbox, and I gave it to her. And within the first 2 hours of her playing it, late at night, she was hooked. And as much as I actually do really enjoy Starfield, I don't like it as much as she does. She adores it. She is super into Starfield. And she's been playing it pretty much, since it's been released. And that was over a month ago. And she just is loving the death out of it. I started playing it and I really do like the game. I didn't think I was going to, especially after I heard a lot of people, streamers and game critics talk about it. They're basically, it's a Bethesda game, blah, blah, blah. And, you have the people who hype it up way too much or think it's the worst game ever in the entire history of video games. And, there needs to be some balance there. But I dropped within the first week, I think I dropped 30 hours into the game. Like, I dove into the game and I'm really digging it. But other games started coming out. I started prioritizing other different things. And I haven't really gone back to it for about a month. And I want to because it is really fun. But it is not my preferred Bethesda game. So if you're going, man, why should I care about Starfield? If you like Bethesda games, you're going to like Starfield because that's what it is. And I think that's what a lot of people who play these games and wanted something different, they're not really getting that crazy different Bethesda game. They're getting Fallout in space, basically. And there is much more to it than that, but it is not as open world as Skyrim and Fallout are. It is very much, you have these planets that you go to, and the planets kind of are self-contained where a single location or two are there. But if you try and say, oh, I'm going to walk across the planet, there's barriers. Because the areas that you land your ship on and you explore, that is what there is to do. And I think there are like certain caves and stuff that you can actually, explore, but it is not like Skyrim. It is not like Fallout. It is something different. And I actually like that. I think it makes it a little bit more linear. And I want that in a Bethesda game. I think saying, oh, you have this gigantic Skyrim world where you can travel from one end to the other. Like even Skyrim and stuff like that, there are barriers to the world. It's just you're in one big gigantic area and you have thousands of little tiny things across the area that you can be in to explore. And I love that. I do. I think Skyrim is a fantastic game. I love Fallout. Fallout is easily my favorite. But I don't want that exact same game replicated in space. I want something different. And the reason why is because we have a game like that, which is called No Man's Sky. And I will go to bat for No Man's Sky at this point. When it came out, I was not on the hype train at all. I did not get why people were losing their minds of this game. But I did buy it on launch day. And it was because, I don't think I was married yet, so I was still a bachelor and I could just kind of waste my money on video games. But when that game came out, I was super into it for the first 10-ish hours. And then I was like, dude, there's not really much here, kind of like Lies of P. There's not much here. And so I dropped it, and I saw the same thing online too. Everyone's like, dude, what is up with this game? It's like the same five things over and over again. Over the course of a couple years, they added and added and added to the game to the point where it actually felt like a fully fledged game that apparently they promised. And because there's a VR component to it too, oh man, the VR in that game is phenomenal. Oh my gosh. And I think in one of the first original episodes of this podcast, I talked in length about playing No Man's Sky in VR, and it is just an incredible experience. So I really do think that we have that game that people want, and it's called No Man's Sky. Starfield is something very different. It is way more linear, which I like because I like stories in games. I like them probably more than game mechanics sometimes. And so with the amount of stories that are in this game, that's what's drawing me to play this game. And I'm not really wanting to just walk out onto a planet and explore it, because I've done that for dozens and dozens of hours in No Man's Sky, and I think it does it better in No Man's Sky with planets. You have, I think it's like 16 quadrillion different planets with No Man's Sky with the procedural generation. Starfield, I believe, has 1,000, but even then I'm not going to nearly, I'm going to like maybe 15, 20 planets in Starfield, because I want to experience the story, do the quests and all that, and then finish the game and beat it and move on with my life, right? I don't want to devote 1,500 hours to this game. I want to devote like 50, right? So I've been really enjoying it. It really is Fallout in space, because they actually use some of the Fallout sound effects. I noticed that in Starfield, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I don't know how I feel about that. I do think that it could have been made a little bit better, but I don't want to just, rag on the game because it's not what I feel like it should have been. Because I'm actually perfectly happy with that game. I'm actually really excited about playing that game some more. It's just right now there's a lot more games, and I kind of got a little frustrated with Elizabeth last night, because she always says, when are you going to play Starfield? When are you going to play Starfield again? And I just go, dude, I'm playing other games right now. And I'll talk about this in just a second here, but I've played and beaten like 3 games in the last week or so, because I'm playing different games. All these games are now starting to come out, and I'm in that mindset of I want to play games again. Like, I'm really digging video games again. And so I want to experience more games. So I kind of got a little frustrated with her last night, because I was just like, dude, stop asking me. I'll get to it when I get to it. Right now, I want to play different games. Later on, I'll dive into Starfield when I want to devote my time to it. Because like I said, in the first week, I devoted my time to that game. But now it's just like, I want to play other stuff right now. I'll get back to it later. So that's my thoughts on Starfield so far. I really like it. I dig it. The constellation stuff, I'm not super into. I'm kind of more into the other stuff. And it's pretty interesting too, because the first several hours of the game, I was like, yeah, this is fine. This is nothing special. But once I started playing it like an action game, and I modded out the inventory equipment, not the equipment, but the inventory encumbrance, I had a much more fun time. I think encumbrance in those games are just worthless, because they give you so much stuff to look at and pick up that if you pick up like 15 things, then you're over encumbered. And it's just like, dude, I want to keep picking some of this stuff up because I know it's going to be useful later on, but I don't want to have to inventory manage every 5 minutes. So I modded out encumbrance so I can pick up, I think I can hold 999,999,999 pounds. And so I can pretty much pick up everything and then sell it off if I want to, or throw it away and junk it, or, whatever. And yeah, it kind of breaks the economy of the game a little bit, to where prices don't really matter if I just pick up a billion things in one go and then sell it all to several merchants and have like $1 million right off the bat. But I'm enjoying it a lot more playing it as an action game. And so that's really, really fun. Another couple games that I've been playing through is kind of bummed me out. The last 2 games that I beat, I'm kind of bummed out about. So I love the Rocksteady Batman Arkham games. You have Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, and Batman Arkham Knight. Batman Arkham Origins is not part of the Rocksteady trilogy. It was a third party, or not third party, but it was like this redheaded stepchild of a half step game that no one wanted, no one asked for, and it's made by a completely different company, but using the same characters, but totally changing a lot of it. And kind of making their own like weird offshoot of the universe or the continuity canon of that Arkham series. So I hate that game. I hate Arkham Origins. I think it's a freaking bad game. And one of the reasons why I'm so mad about it is because not only did it create this divide in the community of fans for the Arkham games. Everyone loves Batman Arkham Asylum. Most people love Arkham City. But because Arkham Origins came in the middle of Arkham City, which is the second game, and Arkham Knight, which is the third game, it created this weird divide where people got kind of sick of the formula because it was the same type of game made by a way less talented development team and kind of tainted the series a little bit for most people. It tainted it, and it introduced franchise fatigue, series fatigue, where it was just like, dude, this is the third game, and yeah, I'm having fun. Okay, whatever. And then Arkham Knight finally came out because it kind of was delayed, and it kind of got really, really big. And so a few years went by where it was supposed to come out, but it got delayed. And then we got this weird half-step game. And then by the time Arkham Knight came out, everyone was going, but I've already played 3 games, and this is just more of the same. I don't think so. And it was like, no, this is actually the third game. That weird Arkham Origins doesn't exist. Don't even think about that. Even Rocksteady themselves said, no, we made it an Arkham trilogy. Batman Arkham Origins does not, exist. It's not part of our canon. It's not part of our franchise. It is this random weird other thing. It's basically like a fan game, right? That's what it is. And so that development team is not very good. It's what is it? So you have Rocksteady, which made the Arkham Asylum, City, and Knight. And then you have the WB Montreal team that made Batman Arkham Origins. The game launched very broken. A lot of game-breaking bugs. A lot of people forget that it was not only broken at launch, but continued to be broken months and months and months later. And then they started releasing DLC, and then they stopped making DLC, and instead of continuing to fix the bugs, they just dropped development altogether. And they've been silent since then. And that was 2014, 2015. Now we have the next game from them. So it's been like 7-8 years, however long. I'm bad at math, but we have this series of games where it's just like, what is going on here? And now we got Gotham Knights, which came out last year. And again, just like the previous game that they made, WB Montreal made a bad game, and it performs really poorly on very good hardware, and still not fixed even a year later. I said I'll never play that game. I didn't buy it, luckily, but it did come on Game Pass. And in between playing Starfield and a couple other games, and then kind of waiting for this last couple of weeks for new games to come out, I decided to at least load it up to see what all the fuss was really about. So here's what Batman Gotham Knights is. It's its own canonical universe where Batman dies. And instead of playing as Batman like everyone would want to, they instead decided to make playable characters out of Nightwing, Robin, Red Hood, and Batgirl. So you got 4 playable characters, and instead of being a single-player focused game like all the other games in that series, it's a multiplayer game with live service elements. So it focuses on gear leveling and just doing the same, things over and over again and getting better gear and cosmetic items and all this other crap that Batman was never about. So it's not really like, the other Batman games, which I actually don't have a problem with. I am okay when you have a fifth, quote unquote, fifth game of this type that does something different. There's zero reason why we should have the same exact game, same exact formula. I mean, that's what we have a problem with the Dark Souls genre, right? It's the same exact game. No one wants that. It's okay for series fatigue to show up in the third or fourth game in the series, but clearly not the entire genre, which is the exact same. Again, this is just what bothers me. But I love Batman, man. I've always been a Batman fan. I remember one of the first movies I ever went to was the original 1989 Batman with my mom. I was 4 years old, and I remember looking up at the screen. We sat in the front row because it was so packed. And I remember looking up and seeing the Joker, use his hand buzzer in that room with all the other mobsters and then the skeleton and all that, and he's laughing. Man, dude, I love Batman. I've always been a Batman fan. So I wanted to at least give this the old college try. Like, I'm good enough to where I can at least play a game and kind of get something good out of it. Like I said, like Lies of P, there are a few little nuggets of something enjoyable that I can get out of it. I'm just glad that I cheated, and I think the game needed to have a difficulty level. And oh man, I could just rant for hours about how stupid it is about that whole argument of Dark Souls games can't have a difficulty slider because no one's asking for easy mode. People are asking for a fair difficulty, not unbelievably ridiculous. So rant pushed out of the side for now, but I can try and enjoy the game for what it is. And it's really interesting because the front part of the game where you actually watch the cutscene where Batman dies is like, oh, wow, that's actually kind of interesting. And seeing the Bat family, Batgirl, Red Hood, Robin, and Nightwing come together is actually kind of an interesting premise, but they don't do anything good with it. And this is the reason why. It's a propaganda game. It is a game made by people who, instead of trying to make a good game and focus on their skills of making a video game, they are pushing social and political agenda. And boy, oh boy, there is so many little jabs at woke stuff that it pissed me off. I actually verbally got angry about it a couple of times. Like, when in the world and why in the world would Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and Red Hood, why in the world, none of those characters are gay, why would they have a gay pride flag in their hangout area, in their quote-unquote Batcave, right? It's not the Batcave, it's the Belfry, which is stupid, but whatever. Why would they have that? Or why would I go searching in Harley Quinn's or I think it was Harley Quinn's area in Arkham Asylum or Blackgate, I can't remember, a prison. Why would there be some little random letter about all that LGBTQZA plus X squared EAZ alphanumeric crap? Why would there be that garbage in that game on a note out of nowhere? There's no context for it, and it's just shoved in there. And I'm going to save this for the next podcast, but I am playing through this new Spider-Man game, and it has that crap in there way more even. It is unashamedly woke, and it is insane that anyone puts up with this. And not even the fact that people put up with it, but people aren't allowed to question it either. That's where I get really mad. Is like, are we all taking crazy pills? Why is this person just randomly telling me that they're homosexual? And also, why are random characters that have never been homosexual the complete opposite, in fact, now randomly lesbian? It's all propaganda. Oh my gosh. And it's ridiculous because anytime you say that, people will call you crazy. They'll call you conspiracy theorist or crazy, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you're homophobic. No, I'm just literally calling it out, and I don't like it, and I'm allowed to not like something. And it gets me mad. Like, this garbage doesn't belong in this game at all. If there are, then if that's allowed, why aren't there hardcore graphic sex scenes in this game? Because that doesn't belong either, right? Why would this be allowed and that not be allowed? Like, again, it's ridiculous, man. Oh, I get angry about it. I don't want to be angry. I want to talk about video games. Not stupid social political propaganda. And it is propaganda. Like, come on, just don't be stupid about it. So I started playing Gotham Knights. I noticed that stuff and I got really angry about it. But I tried to see what else there was in that game. And again, it's not made very well. Because instead of focusing on the gameplay and creating really good, unique characters and dialogue, it is bogged down with modern teenage style writing. These characters, Batgirl, Red Hood, Robin, Nightwing, talk like they're 18 years old. Robin acts like he's 12, which I don't know where Tim Drake is supposed to be, what age group he's supposed to be in. He acts like a 12-year-old, and he's probably like 16, 17, so I'll give him that. But man, these characters sound dumb, and they look dumb too. Most of these characters, the voice acting is pretty bad for the most part. None of it sounds like believable dialogue. And that's maybe why the voice acting is not very good, is because the dialogue that these people are given are just really bad. No one talks like the way that they write these characters. And B, it's very shallow, no substance dialogue that just sounds like it's written out of TikTok. And I hate using that analogy, but that's totally what it is. So again, the game has an interesting premise. What if Batman died and this group of, characters, the Bat family, have to pick up the mantle? I'm totally down with that. That's a great story. And I think this, I can't remember if I started writing the review for it or not, but I really do believe that this game could just have been a Nightwing game and infinitely made better just by that. A single player, maybe even have multiplayer, tag in and have the other character join the game as Batgirl or Robin or Red Hood. But it is a Nightwing game. Nightwing, which is Dick Grayson, the original Robin who grew up and said, I don't want to be a Robin anymore. I don't want to be Batman's sidekick. I can't deal with the way how Batman does things, so I'm going off on my own. That right there is a great character. And giving him his own game for the first time, we've never had a Nightwing game. He's shown up in other games, but he's never had his own. And if you're going to kill Batman off, this is the perfect time to just say Nightwing's the new Batman type character. He's his own dude. He's got his own line, and, make it a unique character and story. That is infinitely better than spreading it out across 4 different characters and giving them like one-off little 5-minute cutscenes to kind of describe who they are as a character a little bit better. That does not help. Making it Nightwing would have salvaged so much of this game's, at least some of the game's like reputation a little bit. Like, oh, well, at least they made a Nightwing game, right? But no, they said, we're just going to do this easy live service type game where you just play it over and over and over again, and Just try and get better, more powerful gear, which you don't really need. You level up and you play through the game and then you can beat it. It's not that difficult. I only had difficulty in the very, very last sections, only because the enemies become bullet sponges. And you're not actually shooting people for the most part in these games, but they just take thousands of hits. Like, there's a point where Harley Quinn basically recruits a bunch of soccer moms, and they call them yoga dads. And I was just like, oh, that is such a stupid term. But she recruits normal people and basically brainwashes them to remove their self-preservation mode in their mind. So they just go all out. They're crazy. They'll just hurl themselves off of buildings and stuff. And again, that's interesting. So you play and this is what I did. You have the option to change your character out and play as Batgirl, Nightwing, Robin, or Red Hood at any point in the game. And I didn't do that at all. I didn't change my character once because I just said, I'm playing as Nightwing and I'm going to treat this as a Nightwing game. And I had a perfectly okay time doing that and disregarding all the other characters and all their other, modes and pretty much any interaction with any of the other characters because I didn't care about them. Because again, they're basically teenagers, modern day TikTok teenagers. And I just went, nope, I do not want to have anything to do with these types of people. I don't want to interact with them. But when I played it as a Nightwing game, and I played through the characters or the missions, finding the different villains. I was like, this is okay. Penguin, I think, is the best character in that game by far because he's written as a very unique version of Penguin where he's not really a bad guy. Like, technically he is. And you could probably, scratch the surface and then start seeing some stuff that he's doing that is probably villainy. Like, it's a bad guy thing to do, but the interactions you have with him, he's basically a good guy. He's an informant. He, is kind of playing both sides a little bit, like almost a double agent in a couple cases, but he's written really well and voice acted really well. Like, he's a believable, real human character. And that I went, oh man, this is amazing. This is actually really good. And that's kind of why I stuck with the game, because every time I had an interaction with the Penguin, I was like, there's something here. There's something to this. But then you get to a character like Harley Quinn. And I've always loved Harley Quinn as a character, especially when I was younger. Like, it was just like my bread and butter type of character. Like, I loved that character. But in the last decade plus, they've completely changed that character. Again, she's Joker's girlfriend, right? She's into the Joker. But out of nowhere, out of the blue, now she's a lesbian, like full-blown lesbian. And it's just like, come on. And they're going hard into that character trait with all the media. Her whole TV show and the new comic and everything. It's just, hey, it's like a big old sign, like, guess what? I'm a lesbian! Like, screaming from the rooftops. And it's like, what is that? Why do you care so much that this character has this one trait? Why is that character defined by that one trait too? Like, that's poor writing, period. So, oh my gosh. But I played the Harley Quinn level. And basically she's so poorly written. It's laughable. Like, I was just busting up laughing. Like, how did this get past writing? How does anyone think this is good writing? Her main big insult for Nightwing, because again, you play as Nightwing. So I'm assuming there's different dialogue for the characters that you play in the cutscenes, but she calls Nightwing Night Butt. And it's not like once, like you go, okay, she's trying to insult him. Okay, whatever. And then she does it again. And you're like, okay, yeah, the clever insult lady. She does it through the entire game. And it's the only thing she says to Nightwing is just call him Nightbutt over and over and over, like 5 times in one sentence. It was laughable. I'm like, dude, these people are terrible at their jobs. These writers are horrible. Man, DC needs to fire these people. Oh my gosh. So I played some Gotham Knight. I beat it. And again, I think there are very interesting, unique little things that they could do with this game to make it actually really, really good. So I would love to talk about it more, but again, I've kind of said everything that I really want to say, is that there's so much potential there. And I really try not to. I really don't like going in with the mindset of bagging on a game because it had the potential for this, but it ended up like that. I do want to look at the game for what it is and talk about the game for what it is. And again, I can do that. And the game is poor. There's little nuggets of good things in that game, but it's not worth the time the time investment for it. It is something that on the surface, it is what you get. You get this really poorly written video game about Batman dying and the Batman family coming together and trying to be like the Batman. And at the very end, there's some really good stuff there again, but it's just not worth it. If I was a different person, if I wasn't me, where I have to play games for myself, right? I don't like just stopping and watching someone play a video game and not playing it for myself. I need to experience it myself to have a better understanding. If I didn't have this podcast, if I didn't have my blog, if I didn't have the website, if I didn't have a Discord, where I feel like people come to me for my opinions on video games, I have to have my own opinion. I cannot just verbally regurgitate an opinion that I saw someone else get from a video game. Because again, that's what's really cool about video games is you can play a video game and have a very different experience than someone else. That's what I love about video games. So I do want to talk about the video game as it stands alone, basically, and not just my own personal, what I thought should have been done. But there are definitely times for that as well. So that's Gotham Knights. And then I don't even know if I want to talk about this right now. Maybe I'll save it, but I did play and beat the new Super Mario Wonder game on the Switch. And I should have stuck with the thing that I wrote an article a few years ago, back in 2017, 2018, about how I believe I grew out of Mario, where basically Mario is a children's game and I'm an adult and it's not made for me and it's made for children. And that's exactly what Super Mario Brothers Wonders is it is a child's video game. It is on the same level as a Sesame Street game. And if you are playing it as an adult, you are playing a child's video game. And I don't mean to knock it that way because I had a conversation with my friends Brady and Jeff, and Brady said basically like, "Oh man, this video game. Have you played Super Mario Wonder?" And I said, "Yeah, and it sucks. It's a child's video game. It's made for 7-year-olds." And then I kind of felt like trying to think of the word here. But I kind of made him a little angry a little bit because I think he was kind of digging it. He didn't really say anything after that. So I backpedaled a little and I basically said, it's not made for a person like me, a 38-year-old guy with no kids. If you have kids, I can see you kind of digging it because you're playing with your kid. That's who it's intended for. And that child, parent and child bonding experience, I don't have any idea about that. So it's not made for me and I'm not going to get anything out of it. But for someone who has a young kid, 4, 5, 6-year-old girl, or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old boy, they're going to probably dig that game. And that's okay. It's just, I really wish people would admit it. That's really, I think, what I get bummed out on is I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I feel like I am the only one who is having this thought process, and it's a very basic thought. Like, this is not some groundbreaking thing that an epiphany of any sort. This is watching what that game is, going, yeah, that's a child's video game, and admitting it. And no one is willing to admit it. And it's crazy that no one's willing to admit it. Like, Mario's catchphrase is wowie zowie. Like, that's not a catchphrase that's cool to say, like, right? Like, we don't want to sit here and go, oh, yeah, what a cool catchphrase. I can't believe Mario said wowie zowie that one time. Or every time he changes into an elephant. Why is Mario changing into an elephant? There is zero reason for this. It could be any character, any animal, any weird... He could be an amorphous blob, which he does change into at some point. It could be a bee like in Super Mario Galaxy. It could be anything. There's no elephants in this game. Why is he changing into an elephant? There's no allusion to the nature or the characteristic of anything elephant. You're not hanging out in the safari, you're not in the Sahara. Like, why isn't he changing into a camel? Or why doesn't he change into an alligator? That makes as much sense as an elephant. There's zero reason for it. It's not explained. And okay. It baffles my mind that these games just don't explain anything anymore. Like, you can go, well, Mario's never, explained. Take the first Mario game. There's no line of dialogue other than your princess is in another castle, right? Every time you get to a castle and Toad is hanging out there saying, no, Princess Toadstool is somewhere else. Go to the next level. That's the only line of dialogue in that game. You don't need it, but this is like the billionth game in the series, and it's the exact same. Bowser takes something that's not his. You have to go chase him down. You have the overworld, you have the worlds, you have the ghost ship, you have the ghost house, or the warship, battleship, whatever you want to call it, the flying fortress. You have the ghost houses. You have the power-ups that kind of just randomly show up, don't make any sense. Like, man, there's just so much formulaic gaming design that it's like, dude, this game is just, it's a carbon copy game with a fresh coat of paint. And I don't know why people are falling over themselves praising this game, because it's the exact same thing. Like, at least with Super Mario 3D World that came out on the Wii U in 2011 or 12, maybe 13, I can't remember. At least that was something a little bit different. But like, why is Mario changing into a cat? More. It's the same exact thing. And it baffles me to no end. Okay, I've got a bunch of stuff to do, so I'm going to wrap this up. In 2 days, a game that is coming out that I'm super, super excited about is Alan Wake 2. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this game. I've been waiting for this game for like 13 plus years. Yeah, about 13 years, since 2010 was when the original Alan Wake came out. The new one comes out. It was finally started and announced in development a couple years ago. And I am just super, super excited for, getting into this game. I love Remedy games. And the fact that Remedy is doing something that is a trend, it is something that a lot of companies are doing right now. They're creating a connected universe. So they took their game Control that deals with like extra supernatural, paranormal activity type stuff. And this game, Alan Wake, kind of has a lot of weird things going on that isn't really explained, supernatural stuff. They're tying them together. So Control Alan Wake and Max Payne are all now part of the connected Remedy universe, which in and of itself is like, okay, whatever. But because these games are actually really well made, really well written and acted and, just designed, I'm all on board with this. And the Control DLC that came out a few years ago actually was the first thing that kind of tied Alan Wake into it, where it was like, oh, you're kind of sensing this character's writing. And so if you've never heard of Alan Wake before, it's basically a video game that came out in 2010 that's very similar to the Twin Peaks TV show and Stephen King novels, where Alan Wake is basically an analog for Stephen King. He's a writer of science fiction, paranormal, kind of thriller, psychological thrillers and stuff like that. And then the setting takes place in this weird little mountain village, very similar to Twin Peaks. And it kind of combines those things together and makes this really, really interesting story about how this writer gets trapped into the world of darkness and everything that he's writing basically comes to life and it manifests itself in the real world. And it's a really cool premise. I only played it once and I don't think I'm going to replay it before this game comes out because I don't think I need to. And I just want to play the new game. So I'm super, super stoked with it. And also just kind of finalize this podcast episode up here. I am really looking forward to Alan Wake 2. And then our game of the month for this month, which is almost over, is the Resident Evil 4 remake. I started it back when it first came out. I didn't get into it too much. I dropped it. I had some weird technical issues with my computer, but that's all fixed now. And I want to keep streaming it. So be on the lookout for that. But that's pretty much it for this episode of the Game or Die podcast. I know it's been a little bit of a weird one, but again, I've been talking all day long, all week long, all for the last several weeks. And I just keep going, okay, I'm going to record today. And I wanted to do it. So be on the lookout for the next episode of the podcast. I don't know when that's going to be. Maybe it's in a few weeks from now. Maybe it's next month. I'm not sure. I just kind of do these whenever I can and whenever I feel like it. But thank you very much for watching and listening. You can always go to gameordie.net to look at the reviews that I've been talking about. If you want to go, wow, Ryan sounded really passionate about Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Brothers and Lies of P and Gotham Knights, you can go look up those reviews on the website and kind of read more coherent thoughts about those games and also listen to the other podcast episodes and everything like that. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on the website. But until next time, I'm Ryan Moore for Game or Die. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you next time. Peace out.